Do you ever feel that you're not just not getting better at art, you're actually getting worse? Well, you're not alone. 99% of artists think that progress looks like this, when actually it looks more like this. And you see this here? That's what Seth Godin calls the dip, and we are all going to be in the dip at some point. You might be there right now. And in this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips to get out of the dip. But first, how do you even know you're in it? Well, if you suddenly can't seem to draw what you could draw before, or your motivation to draw or create has just suddenly gone, then you're in the dip. The first tip to get out of the dip is to recognize how you might end up there in the first place. The best cure is preparation, and these are some of the most common reasons why you may end up in the dip. If you're starting a comic or another long project, then you're going to hit the dip at some point, and it's usually when the honeymoon period is over. That's after the period where we're really excited and full of motivation to get the project done. But the problem with motivation, especially motivation that comes from external factors like the approval of others, is that it's a really crappy fuel source because it burns out really fast. Imagine that your comic is a car and your car is fueled by motivation. You burst out from the start and you're racing down the road. Everything's going really well. And you don't notice that you're about to hit the dip, and wouldn't you know it, you've hit it. And now that you're in the dip, you don't have the fuel to get back out of it again. So you just sort of sit there and eventually you just get out of the car and you go home. It's one of the main reasons why so many comics get started, but not that many get finished. However, if you kit your car out with an alternative fuel source before your journey, then you'll have enough to get out of the dip. And that fuel source is planning, and the mileage is amazing. I talk about planning more in this video here, which I'll also link in the description, but I'll go over some of the things you'll want to have before you start your journey. Number 1, character sheets for reference, especially for when your panels become more challenging. Number 2, create 3D models of some of your scenes, which will make it a lot easier to remain consistent with the items within your scene, as well as the perspective. And number 3, a realistic schedule that is sustainable. This is going to look different for everyone, but just don't overestimate your future self. Take it one page at a time, remain patient, and you will get there eventually. And with this, now your car is a hybrid where it can be fueled by your initial excitement to start the journey and good planning to finish it. The second tip to get out of the dip, that's really fun to say, is to understand that art is a mental skill. And because of that, your perception of art moves faster than your technical skills do. What do I mean? Well, your ability to spot problems and appreciate art nuances is going to happen before you're able to solve them. Which means that when you start to think that your art is getting worse, it isn't. It's just that you're getting better at spotting mistakes that you previously missed. So although it might feel like you're getting worse, you're actually getting better. It's like you're preparing yourself to get to that next level before you actually get there. As an example, you may have thought that your characters look pretty decent, but then all of a sudden their legs are too short or their heads are too big. Well, congratulations, you understand proportion better than you did before. Now all you have to do is study proportion or whatever other thing that you've noticed, and that new knowledge will get you out of the dip. The third tip to get out of the dip is to do a bit of self-reflection. Because art is a mental skill that requires the brain to create, you need to take care of it, and most of us don't. You might have fallen into the dip because it's your brain's way of telling you that you need to take a break. It might seem like the quickest and easiest way to get out of the dip is to force it through by using grit and determination. Seth Godin talks about grit and determination in his book, and I agree. But grit and determination doesn't mean forcing anything. Having the grit and determination to just stop for a little while, relax, breathe, sleep, and then re-engage is what will get you out of the dip. If you don't do that and you just force yourself to draw, then you'll just make yourself more frustrated and angry, and they act like weights, keeping you in the dip for longer. And if relaxing doesn't do anything for you, then you need to reflect on your own expectations. Are they too high? Are you comparing your output with other people? Have certain things in your life changed from when you first started your comic or project, and you haven't adjusted your schedule or your maximum capacity to fit those changes in? It's 100% worth it to take a week away from everything that you're doing to get your ducks in order and then come back to it rather than just plowing on through. In the long term, you'll be better for it. Because when we're in the dip is when we're at our most vulnerable and most irrational. It's when the voice of doubt is at its loudest, and it's the most likely time we are to quit. Some people quit projects and some people quit making art altogether. But here's the thing, sometimes the only way to get out of the dip is to quit. I'm talking about quitting projects here, not art altogether. So when should you quit? That's a tough question to answer, and it's really personal, so I can only really speak for myself, but I have quit comic projects in the past when I've realized that I couldn't give enough of myself to them anymore. I quit a comic project over a year ago because I knew that my circumstances were going to drastically change, and so I wouldn't have nearly enough time to dedicate myself to it. It meant I left money on the table and a burgeoning partnership with a talented writer, but I didn't want to be involved in a project that I couldn't give my full attention to. I think another good reason to know when to quit a project is when it's significantly impacting your mental health and no amount of relaxing or restructuring your schedule is changing that. At that point, it might be worth putting the project on ice until you recover. And if you never pick up the project again, that's okay. It's all part of the learning experience. I quit a personal comic project because I didn't know what I was doing, which I talk about in this video here, also linked in the description. If you're in the dip for weeks or months, then don't panic. You know, people say that if you find yourself in a deep body of water, you should relax and not thrash about. Well, that's what you should do in the dip as well. Try not to stress if you're in there for a while. Give yourself the time and space you need to make it through to the other side. I know most of us want answers quickly. I get it, I do too. And one of the best ways to get the best answers the quickest way is to speak to people who have been through what you're currently going through, and then asking them what they did to get from point A to point B. Which brings me nicely to the sponsor of this video, me. I offer one-to-one mentorships on my Patreon to help you with your comic projects, but if you're not ready for that and just want to join in a new community of creators, then come and have a look and see if it's something that can help you. You can chat to me on Discord or through Patreon, whether you're a member or not, and I'll happily answer any questions you may have. With the fast-paced online world that we live in, everything kind of feels like a race. Get this done by that age, spend this amount of time and you will definitely receive this. But there isn't a race when it comes to art because there's no finish line. You're going to be learning and improving forever, and so to think that you should be at a certain level because you've invested a certain amount of time doesn't really make any sense. Stress, anxiety and fatigue are art killers, and so you need to treat yourself with the same amount of respect and reverence that you treat learning the art fundamentals. If anything, it's way more important to do that because that kind of affects everything. I'm not very good at doing this, but I am getting significantly better, and if you want to know what happens when you don't prepare for the dip, watch this video.